On this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling, I will talk with Sean Benjamin about the week that was, including new women's tag team champions, an impending debut on SmackDown, as well as some fun between the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders on Raw. That's all to come on this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Hey there, welcome back to another edition. I am your host, Sean Meyers, and behind me honoring the fallen Elias. Unfortunately, he is only with us in spirit, but I have co-host Sean Benjamin here tonight joining us. Sean, thank you for taking the time. We are just minutes removed from another edition of Friday Night SmackDown, and I kind of want to start there because I thought the ending of SmackDown was pretty interesting. We have new women's tag team champions, as I said at the open. It is Sasha Banks and Bayley. I'll be honest, even while this match was happening, I didn't realize at first that it was a title match. So
right, yeah.
And I'm sure they promoted it, but sometimes I kind of just zone that, don't pay that close attention. And I didn't expect there to be a title change. But Sasha and Bayley are the champs. Bayley is now a double champion because she's also the SmackDown Women's Champion. And this, to me, was surprising because it looked like the feud was between the Iconics and Alexa and Nikki. What's your takeaway from this, and what does this maybe mean for the future of women's wrestling, both as tag team division and then overall for the Women's Championship on SmackDown?
Yeah, it's a definite shock for sure. I mean, I didn't expect that. That was definitely you've been watching the last couple of weeks. What's been going on between the Iconics and Nikki, and it really them getting on Nikki. But you notice tonight after the match, you've seen a little, Alexa looking at Nikki like it was her fault. Maybe they're getting ready to twist, Alexa back to being a bad person, and being that heel character, which she's good at,
Do you remember, because this is very much a vivid example of WWE changing mid-storyline, it seemed as though this was set up like a year plus ago that Alexa clearly was going to turn on Nikki. And then they kind of just gave up on that, and you're like, hey, we'll just keep them as a tag team. So in a sense, I think if they do what you're speculating, that's going to be like what the end result was always supposed to be. But at the same time, even during this match, they continued to tease Sasha and Bayley breaking up because there was some miscommunication. Sasha was ticked about it. There's no doubt in my mind they're going to break up, but this adds another wrinkle to it. So if, let's say we fast forward about 2 months to SummerSlam, do you anticipate maybe both of these teams are split and going against one another at that point?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happen. And I like you said, I think it was always in the plans for Nikki and Alexis to go, supposed to go against each other. So, now I think it's kind of run its course. They're at that time where they got to make a change, so, it is a little weird with the Iconics. I was shocked at the end. I did not expect the title change at all. And now you got Bayley as a double champ. I know it drives my household crazy. There's not a lot of Bayley fans here.
You know what? I was thinking right before we came on, I'm shocked at how good of a heel she's become because, what was it, like 5 or 6 years, she was exclusively a face. And it seemed like she was one of those people that they called her the female John Cena.
Yep.
She was destined to sort of be that same gimmick because it appealed to, the young girls, the teens and even preteens.
Yep.
And I think at first the heel turn to me was kind of like, we'll see where this goes, but she changed her look. And now she's like, especially with Michael Cole, she's just super obnoxious, and I love it. She was like laughing in his face, and she's become a lot more entertaining. She can maybe still go back to the face down the road, but for now I think this has been great for her.
Yeah, she's turned up, and you get to see a different side of her and a different part of her game, and it's good. For the longest time she was that character. It was getting bland, it was getting old, but now that she's turned, I mean, I know she drives the women in my house crazy, so I know she's driving a lot of other fans crazy.
I really enjoyed the exchange tonight on SmackDown between Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles.
Yeah.
And I will say that there seemed to be a bit of realism behind it because, politically, in real life, those guys are complete opposites. And they sort of made, like, veiled references to that. And it ended up leading to a match because those two are going to square off next week. And this is another confusing thing because a lot of people I saw on Twitter thought that match was taking place tonight.
That's what I thought too.
And then I thought, okay, it's not tonight. They're going to have it at the next pay-per-view. It's not at the pay-per-view either, although I guess theoretically they could do like a fake finish next week. But either way, I think that match, if they give them the time and the opportunity, that could be one of the best matches of the year. But tonight, the verbal exchange even further solidified my interest in that feud.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever they went against each other right before Bryan turned heel, that was a good match. Whenever AJ was the baby face and Bryan was the heel, or turned heel, they kind of both came in as the baby face. That was a great match.
Bryan won the title then, right?
Yeah, because he cheated to get it, and that's when he turned bad. And, it was a great match then. I'm looking forward to a really good match now. These guys are top of the top-notch guys. So definitely looking forward to seeing that match. The face-off with them was really cool tonight. It was cool to see. I know those guys go all the way back to Ring of Honor with Nigel McGuinness and everything. So, to see those guys, it's interesting.
And by the way, you mentioned Nigel McGuinness. He has been, in my estimation, sorely missed on NXT.
Yeah, absolutely,
They've done this sort of weird, like, remote commentary for NXT where I would guess Tom Phillips is there, and then they have Beth and they have Morrow doing it like from their homes, and they kind of talk over each other, but Tom Phillips is awkwardly used, and Nigel was the guy who brought it all together. To me, he's probably the best color commentator in WWE.
Yeah, and he's the hardest working. You'll see him on NXT. He's on NXT UK. He's on 205 Live at times. He does such a nice job, and he is very missed right now. Mauro Ranella, he's coming around, but like you said, he's doing it remotely, so it's taken away from it a lot.
Right. Anything else that stood out tonight on SmackDown? We had some fun exchanges, I would say, between Strowman and Miz and Morrison. It's the title feud, so some people are probably going to say, like, you need to be more serious. But I think that this isn't like a big-time, massive feud. It's, it's sort of a filler pay-per-view, and to me it kind of works because I would rather have this than, like, Miz and Morrison just, like, beat them up in the ring, double team, It's a little more creative than that.
Those two, Miz and Morrison they're comical. Just watching them doing everything and just arguing with each other is just hilarious. And, I like the angle that they were going. I was real glad that they didn't hit the car whenever they were going towards the windows, and they just did the windshield, because, as soon as they walked up on the car, I was like, oh my, please don't start hitting the car. But, they stuck to the windshield. What's that?
Just guessing. I could probably get an answer if I really tried, but, like,
yeah,
I would think that's probably Strowman's legit vehicle, and they said, hey, we'll just buy you a new windshield. But, like, if I'm Strowman, I'm probably a little apprehensive,
Absolutely. He was probably telling, don't miss the windshield. Make sure you hit the windshield, because, that's a nice car. And as soon as they walked up on it, I was like, oh, my, that's crazy that they're doing that.
Yeah. So anything else that you thought was noteworthy from tonight? I know with the shirt you're wearing, you're looking forward to maybe what's to come on SmackDown.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to it. Looking forward for Matt Riddle. He's a fan favorite here at the house. I watched him. I've been watching him for years. I'm a huge MMA fan. So, watch him when he was in MMA, now to transform over. And he had some great matches in NXT, and definitely looking forward to him being on SmackDown and seeing some different matches and seeing him used. He showed some things like towards the end there that he's ready to step out and play that type of role by having his little game show and everything, that he can step up and play the roles that Vince wants on those shows.
I want to circle back to Wednesday, and we'll focus with NXT to begin. We had talked since the wave of releases about a lot of the names, and you and I talked at length about Drake Maverick and how he was sort of unique because he was released. He had this Twitter message where he was basically in tears, but he said, and it kind of caught me, I paid attention at the time. I had my antennas up when he said, they're going to allow me to continue to wrestle in this tournament, because it's like, that's a really weird situation, right? You have this guy you release, but you're going to let him wrestle at least 3 matches on TV. and he lost the first. And I kind of thought all along they're going to have him lose in the finals, and whoever beats him in the finals is going to be this massive heel. But the way the tournament was playing out, it wasn't going to be a heel that beat him. So I think the last couple of weeks, people were saying like, hey, like, what's going to happen here? I'm watching this not because I really cared that much about the tournament, even though it's produced good matches, because I care about Drake Maverick. And what ends up happening is he makes it to the finals, he loses, and for a second at least, it looked like that was going to be it. Personally, I always had in mind, like, once they started building this for him, that he probably was going to come back.
Right.
So Triple H, as you just saw, came out, gave him the contract. He sticks around. I'm pretty sure his release was legitimate. How do you think this played out from the time that he was released to now when he's clearly re-signed with his company?
It's funny that you started now because they're actually showing the match over again on 205 Live. But I think he was let go. I think they seen how much he cared about, the WWE and what they were doing, and they allowed him, because of the message he sent, to allow him to go out and be in a couple more matches. They said, okay, we'll give it. But they saw how well it was being viewed. They saw how much he was putting into it, and I think it might have sparked some things that maybe gave him another chance. And good for him. I mean, I was really happy to see at the end, that they did give him the contract and he's able to stay on, because, I mean, he did do some good things. He's a smaller guy, but he's a good cruiserweight, and he'll be another good guy that goes. And he used to be the GM of 205 Live. Now he's going to probably be in 205 Live. So it'll be a pretty good twist.
There's a lot of wrestlers who were released and didn't get this opportunity that Drake had. And I know Lio Rush has been sort of outspoken saying, like, this is pretty messed up. I'll say this, like, the rumors now are that Drake re-signed at a much smaller price tag, and that a few other wrestlers have been offered a chance to come back after being released, but at a reduced rate. Do you expect that anyone else comes back in the short term?
I would say, like, it's definitely one of those, redoing the contracts, coming, like you see in the NFL or NBA or, just coming back at a lower rate just to be on the team. And I think some guys are going to want to do that. You've seen the Revival, now FTR, they're over, in AEW now. So, some guys are going to move on. And you saw, who else was it? Deonna Purrazza's in Ring of Honor now, or not Ring of Honor, but Impact.
Right.
So, I mean, you got a lot of people are moving on. They're testing their worth, which good for them. I mean, that's part of the game. But I think some guys will take that lower cut just to be part of the team.
It seems like, if I were to guess, Sarah Logan's the first name that comes to mind as maybe coming back, because there was talks about them trying to use her after she was released. She's married to a current roster member. Although, so is Zack Ryder is certainly dating Chelsea Green, but it looks like maybe he's already kind of thought about the next chapter.
He went ahead and did some things outside to solidify his name. But Sarah Logan, she's married to one of the Viking Raiders. So, I mean, that's a huge team in the WWE. So,
and we'll get into them in just a little bit. It will be interesting to see also, maybe down the road, if WWE circles back on some of these people. And I know Lio Rush is a guy that has probably burned some bridges, but to me, like, that's the talent level that they could use. But think of who the world champion is right now on Raw, a guy who was let go in Drew McIntyre. He left for about 2 years and got a lot better and really created buzz that he didn't have towards the end of his WWE run. They bring him back. He's all the better for it. Jinder Mahal, which, let's be honest, he's nowhere near Drew McIntyre, but he got physically bigger, and they liked what they saw. They brought him back. They brought Kurt Hawkins back at least once already. So they do have a penchant for bringing guys back after they release them. I would say if you fast forward a year to 2 years, probably a few people, and maybe Anderson and Gallows find out, hey, we want to be with AJ Styles again, that type of deal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of these people are brought back, maybe not right away, but down the road.
Yeah, I think once things start to go a little more green and things start to change and, they start to get back to a semi-normal, it's not going to be normal for a long time, but as soon as they can get back to semi-normal, you'll see some guys start filtering in and out. And, and I think it'll be good. I mean, I was very upset when Leo Rush was let go. I mean, he's one guy I've always been a fan of. His style is just great for WWE, and I'd love to see him come back one day, as well as Gallows and Anderson. Coming off WrestleMania and then them being let go. I mean, that was just crazy in itself. But so were a lot of the cuts. So it'd be nice to see. You got some people that definitely want to test their worth and try to go out, and it's paid off. I mean, look at Moxley. Look at Harper. I mean, that match at the pay-per-view for AEW was great.
And ironically, it was those two against one another. So
yeah, right. Yeah, definitely. And those two, I mean, you never would have seen that. We talked that night. You never would have seen that match in WWE. Never would have seen it. But, that it was a good match for AEW. And, I mean, AEW's doing their thing. They're building it the way they want to. They seen the differences. A lot of those guys are from WWE. So they seen the differences. They seen how they wanted to make the changes. And they're making the changes. And they're doing their show. WWE sticking to their plan. I do kind of see on Raw, though, you see how Drew became champion. Andrade was the U.S. champion. They're kind of building Andrade up. In NXT, Drew lost the belt to Andrade. Right. So are they kind of working to that rematch again? So it's the storylines are interesting if the history. To some people that are just coming in, they kind of get lost, but I think if you're a fan like we are, the history and what's going on, it's a great time for wrestling.
You're talking about NXT, you're talking about AEW. When you look at the ratings this week, it was AEW by a nose. It was very close, and NXT's ratings were up. I don't know if AEW maybe had dropped a little bit, but they're very, very close. And when I looked at Wednesday night with NXT, they're building towards their standalone pay-per-view, which is TakeOver in your house. And I think that, most people dig that because it's a throwback, but it makes sense at this point. It's going to be, the empty arena. So they're doing that. They're building to that. One duo that I've thoroughly enjoyed, we talk about Bayley and how the heel turn paid off with her. I think Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae have been terrific in their new incarnation. Now, we've seen Johnny be a heel very briefly, but this is brand new for Candice and the company. To me, they've hit a home run, and Johnny Gargano's always been a great promo. I think he's always sort of played the underdog character well. He's been arguably the best wrestler in the company, but he's showing so much more with this storyline. I'm just loving what I'm seeing from those two, and it's leading to them against Keith Lee and Mia Yim, even though it's going to be a one-on-one match on Sunday. I've really enjoyed that aspect of it each and every Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the match, whenever they did their Gargano and Candice did their dinner, and then when Mia Yim and Keith Lee did theirs, and it was a good twist. I mean, it's a good storyline right now. I think the match, like you said, Johnny's a phenomenal wrestler, always has been. And I think putting him with Keith Lee, I can't see him winning the title on Sunday, but I think they're going to set it up to he'll eventually get it.
Anything else that you found notable about NXT in recent weeks? I guess we should note that we talked about Drake Maverick losing, but that means that there's a new interim cruiserweight champion. And it's El Hijo del Fantasma, who I honestly know very little about. I know that they hyped him coming into this tournament. Yeah. I'll be honest, there's a lot of times that NXT hypes like an international guy, and I'm a little disappointed. And I know I'm sort of tough to please, but I think back to Hideo Itami, pretty much bombed. I think Kushida has been a little disappointing. If people are telling you he's one of the best junior heavyweights or whatever term you want to use in the world. Right. Some of these people who come from either Mexico or Japan, I think have a hard time transitioning to the WWE style, even if it's an NXT. Phantasma, to me, I think of the cruiserweights that I watched on 205 Live, and I think a lot of those guys have impressed me more than what I've seen from him. Do you think it's something that over the course of time he will become one of the best workers, or is it going to be, a guy like Sin Cara never really made that smooth transition. Ultimo Dragon never really did in the company either.
Yeah, I think it takes a little while for those guys to get used to. It's a different way of wrestling, coming from down in Mexico and then coming up here. I do like some things that he's done. I'm a big fan of him. I watched some of the, the things. I went back and watched like a history, a little bit of his matches and what he did. And I mean, he's an exciting guy, can do a lot of phenomenal things. He would be a good guy I'd love to see was Ricochet, Cedric Alexander, one of those. And I'd love to see them get back to, Ricochet is a cruiserweight, so Cedric Alexander. Get those guys back in a little bit too. Not just make it the normal, like 6 guys. Bring the other guys in who are cruiserweights too and have them step up. It's still a top title. It's not like a scrub title. And, definitely build it up more by bringing those guys back in and challenging for it.
And you're mentioning some guys on Raw. Well, there's been a pretty big Hispanic contingency on Raw recently with obviously you mentioned Andrade, but I think when you look at Selena Vega's group with Angel Garza, and then one of their foils has been Humberto Carrillo. So they have the talent, the Hispanic talent on Raw, that if they wanted to bring up another guy to throw into the storylines, I think that we've seen that they're willing to do that and at least give that guy some decent time.
Right. I would like to see that, like have a guy drop down like they're doing with the, the cross brand invitational, have a guy drop down, have a guy come up, like, just have him pop in. And it just creates that excitement, and it gets people wondering like, oh, I'm going to tune in tonight because I want to see if this person shows up. I want to see if that person, it goes back to the whole thing years ago with WCW. Everybody wanted to tune in to see what Sting did. You know what I mean? So, like, you do stuff like that and tease week to week, then people are going to chime in to see what's happening.
People that have been tuning into Raw recently have been seeing the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders doing some very interesting stuff. And this is where I think it's so hard in the current landscape for WWE to please everyone. Because so many people are saying, like, we want like a throwback to the Attitude Era, where it was very much based on storylines and characters and not on in-ring work. Okay, we know that if you want to watch just in-ring work, you're probably going to watch AEW, NXT, Ring of Honor, New Japan. If you're watching Raw or SmackDown, you want to see like characters and ridiculous stuff. And that's what they're doing with the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders. And I know Justin Lowry has said, I'm fine with that stuff. It just has to be well done. And that's where maybe you could say, has this been well done? I think it's been sort of hit or miss, and they went bowling this past week. I don't know exactly how this is going to play out. I mean, they'll probably realistically just end up eventually getting into a fight at the end of one of these, and it leads to a match.
That's what I'm expecting too,
Has this been worthwhile? What have they done well, or what have they failed to do well over this past month? Because I think this is 4 or 5 straight weeks that they've done these skits now.
Yeah, I mean, they did they started with golf, basketball. Then they went golfing. Then they went, they're throwing axes. They've mixed it up week to week. And I mean, the first couple were pretty good. I'm kind of done with it now. I'd like to see a little different, but
it's ironic. You probably remember the Mr. Perfect vignettes.
Yep.
I will say those are some of my favorite things in this company's history, and he did a lot of, because I remember. Okay, he hit home runs with Wade Boggs, and then he played goalie against Mike Madonna, and he was shooting basketball with one of the Timberwolves, and then with Steve Jordan. He threw the touchdown pass to himself. But they also had like him bowling, him golfing. I think he was diving. All these things that they did a lot of them. But it seemed like when back then, again, we were very young at the time. It didn't get so tiresome. Whereas now it's like, how many weeks in a row are they going to do this? How many weeks in a row, even if you go to SmackDown, are they going to have the hacker teased and not pay that off? Which it seems like they might have sort of given up on that for the time being.
They've stopped.
If you do it for like more than like 3 or 4 weeks, it seems like people are just like over it. It's so tough to get people interested, but then not bore them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I enjoyed the basketball one. The axe throwing was pretty comical. They went into the golf when they came in the bowling this week, I was like, we'll see what they have. I mean, it's a storyline that they like. The guys are having fun doing it, and it's filling the time needed for the show. I mean, it's all about, trying to fill the time in the space. But, they definitely, I'm getting a little bored myself with it.
And the other aspect of it is, I think it really works for the Street Profits. And part of me thinks like, okay, this is like showing a lighter side to the Viking Raiders. And they sort of did that with the Revival too, where they kind of made them into like a little bit more comedy. But at the same token, it's going to be really hard like 3 months from now if they try to present the Viking Raiders as like these just brutal killers. Because you're going to think back to this and you're going to be like, no, they're kind of just comical guys, right?
Right. Yep. It's going to be hard to get them back. And that's where you teeter on that line. Is it, how far do you go with something like this? Because if you go too far, then you lose the audience on them.
And do you remember the Ascension? Like sort of, they became a comical thing with Tyler Breeze and Fandango, and they never really returned.
Never came back.
And they were kind of pigeonholed into like being a comical group the rest of their time.
Right. And when they were in NXT, I mean, they were one of the longest reigning tag teams champs of all time. I mean, they're one of the best to ever come out of there. But once they got to the main roster, the Road Warrior gimmick, and then they tried to make it funny, and then it just wasn't working out.
Well, one thing that's never comical is injuries in wrestling, and it seems like, unfortunately, when you think about Monday Night Raw and you think of Nia Jax, there's a litany of injuries that she's been at least involved with, maybe not solely responsible for. And if you had watched Monday Night Raw and didn't read about what happened, you probably wouldn't even thought too much of it. But Kairi Sane was apparently split open pretty badly to the point where she posted a picture, and it was a brutal cut on the top of her head. It appeared as though it was her going into the steps, and if you watched it, it was like Nia threw her maybe a little too hard, but maybe Sane was a little off balance. It becomes an issue because Justin and I talked about this about a month ago. If it happens once or twice or 3 times over, a long career, okay, but this is like 5 or 6 well-documented injuries sustained by Nia's opponents in pretty short order. We know that she's legitimately probably twice the size of a lot of her opponents, and in this case, even more than twice the weight of Sane.
You're right.
So it's a tough spot because she's just naturally so much bigger, and that's why in other sports you don't see people that are 130 or 150 pounds different going against one another. But on Raw, it seems like they aren't shying away from having Nia continue to work prominent matches and storylines after all this has happened. So how would you approach it if you were in charge and Nia Jax had been at least partially responsible for a lot of injuries?
Yeah, I mean, she almost destroyed the WrestleMania, main event, with Becky when she, blasted her and, everything that happened there. But, I know if you watch, like the Divas and stuff like that, and not that I watch weekly, but, I've seen some things. I know that she's very conscious of that, and she's upset. Like she was upset for a long time over the Becky incident, that, what she did there. And I know it's conscious, and it's almost one of those things like she doesn't know her own strength. She doesn't know because, I mean, she whipped Kyrie over pretty hard, you know what I mean? And I think it's one of those things, she just doesn't know her own strength. And they definitely got to have somebody work with her because she's a good talent, but she's injuring too many people, and she's got to be under more control. You know what I mean? So there's enough people there to work with her and to make sure that doesn't happen.
It does seem like that the company really hasn't shied away from continuing to push her after all of this, though. And
no, she's definitely an asset for sure.
Like you hear stories sometimes if someone messes up once and then Vince kind of sours on them, and maybe not punishes them, but reduces their role. And I know that a lot of people bring up, well, Seth Rollins also hurt a lot of people. I'll say this, like Seth Rollins, in a sense, you could say is responsible for ending Sting's career, but I think that was like exactly how that bump should have gone. It's just Sting's body couldn't take it. So I look at him kneeing John Cena and then injuring Finn Balor with the buckle bomb on the outside, which really is just a dangerous spot to begin with. They probably shouldn't have done. But you can also say, like, Seth has produced some of the best matches, and almost everyone that goes against him says he's a terrific talent. Nia doesn't have that credibility, and that's where it's different. It's not like she's had a prolific 15-year career through various promotions where she's had great success. She's been basically 5 years in NXT and WWE, and during that time, she's had a lot of incidents.
Yeah, she's definitely not the caliber of Seth. I mean, Seth is definitely, he's one of my favorites up here. The Messiah's hanging, but he's definitely, he's had his share. And if you go back, I don't know if you've seen on the network, they have it's like a documentary with Sting and Seth, and they talk about what happened. It just came out recently. I don't know if you have a chance to see that. I did not see it. Yeah, they talk about it, and Sting talks about it in depth. Like, he came up right after. I'm so sorry. I was you for, Halloween years ago, blah, blah, blah. Right after, as he was getting loaded into the ambulance, and he told a million, like, it's not your fault. It's not this. It's not yours.
If you go back and watch that spot, it looks like it was done correctly. And by comparison, just about a month ago, when Nia and Kyrie were wrestling for, I think, the second time, because they've had 3 matches in the past 6 weeks.
Yeah,
there was almost like a buckle bomb type move where Nia seemingly did not protect Kyrie, and it turned out not to necessarily injure her, but it was just a scary looking spot. Sometimes people get injured doing the spots correctly. Sometimes they avoid injury when the spots are botched. So you don't always just base it on the results, but I look at the execution of it. And Seth with Sting, I don't think did anything wrong.
No, I don't either. And I mean, he talks about it on there in depth. And, Sting even said, I mean, he had issues with his neck, and it just came to play, And as far, as Nia, that's something that they have to work on. They're at the Performance Center full time right now. They should be taking advantage of that and working on that. And I'm sure they are on a daily basis.
So you talked a little bit about Total Divas. We're talking about Nia Jax. I have had plenty of free time recently, and so I caught up on Total Divas. I caught up on Total Bellas, which I'm going to be honest, the Bellas are just pretty terrible people if you watch them on a regular basis.
They really are.
There's so many of them, so many of the women just rub people the wrong way. I actually think that very few come across well. I think Naomi consistently has come across as a pretty good person. And then the ones who are normal people who are kind of quiet and don't create drama are only on for 1 season. They had Mandy Rose on for 1 season, got rid of her. They had Alexa Bliss on for 1 season, got rid of her because they weren't dramatic and all these different things. But I have started watching Ms. and Mrs., and I've loved watching this show because it's completely different. It's just fun and good-hearted and not real serious and dramatic. Part of me thinks WWE would be better off to have that approach as opposed to the Total Divas, Total Bellas approach where everything has to be super dramatic and this cliffhanger each and every week. But when I watch a show like that, I think this is fun. This is, Miz and even Maurice come across as just fun, enjoyable people. I don't think that happens enough with the talent they have. They can do a better job of making their talent come across as more likable, enjoyable people.
Yep. Yeah, Ms. and Mrs., we watch it all the time here. I mean, it's a great show. Just seeing, and it's cool seeing, how Miz is after, the one episode where he's wrestling when Maurice was pregnant, and then he comes home and he goes and does a nude photo shoot, and that's hilarious there. Watching him with Ziggler, watching a Browns game, which is hilarious, just us being Steeler guys, but watching them get so excited for a Browns game, it's comical. I mean, it's just, it's different, but it's cool to see that side of them. And like they said, I don't know if you've seen the one episode, how the neighbors down in Texas thought they were these, idiot wrestlers, and they didn't care about anything.
Right.
Yeah. And
I think that's sort of the impression that people get sometimes when they watch. Yeah. But when they see a show like that, it's if you were doing that type of show with Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins or whatever, maybe the fans don't turn on them after a few months. You know what I mean? It's
exactly
to me.
Yep.
That they would. Everyone understands what wrestling is now. It's not the 1980s. You see these people in their outside lives. You see them on Twitter. Why not profile them like what they're doing with Miz and Maurice?
Yeah, the kayfabe is kind of dying with the Undertaker. So it's
and now they're doing this great behind the scenes look with him.
Yeah. Yep, and like he said, he's one of the last true kayfabe guys, and it's kind of getting into that more reality based, and like we were saying about the Ms. and Mrs. on the one episode, and they said, on camera, we play, we're arrogant, we can push the limit, but that's not the people we are when we're outside. And I'd be curious to see if they do anything with Seth and Becky with this whole thing if something would come about. But I can't see them playing the Miz and Mrs. role. That wouldn't be that wouldn't be them. But
yeah, you
I'd
can't
be
do
curious
that
to see
with everyone. But I would think that would help if the company sort of presented that. And I thought NXT always has done a good job showing like what's behind these wrestlers. And I remember Roderick Strong debuted in NXT, and he was like, okay, everyone knows he's a good worker, but why would they care about him? And then they showed his like really tough upbringing, and all of a sudden, like immediately after, he started getting a bigger reaction. You show people's real lives and why they are interesting people and why you should care about them, and fans start to care about them. It seems like no one has any reason to care about Apollo Crews right now.
No, not at all.
If they gave you like a 20-minute look at who he is with his little daughter and everything, then I think it would change pretty quickly.
Yep, and I listen to the podcast After the Bell with Corey Graves. I listen to all that because I like to get the other side, And last week, listening to After the Bell with Corey Graves and Seth Rollins, I'm a big Seth Rollins fan, so and I love the Messiah character. He's like branching out and doing something he's never done before, and like he's hitting a home run in my eyes with it because he's catching a lot of heat, but he's also like just seeing him embrace that role and he was on top of the world. Everybody loved him. And then all of a sudden on the drop of a dime, when Bray came around, they turned on him. He completely went the other way. And then he took it and ran with it. And, I really enjoy the character that he's doing, but I would like to I want to see that other side. And that way you get more invested. I agree.
So, final thing I wanted to touch on, we mentioned that NXT has a standalone pay-per-view this Sunday, and they've done that a few times now. Do you think, first off, that this makes it more significant for NXT to be on its own on a Sunday, or do you think it was a bigger deal when it was attached to a big pay-per-view like a Royal Rumble or Survivor Series and they have it the night before? And secondly, what are you most looking forward to as far as the card on Sunday?
I like the fact that they're doing it standalone, that they're they kind of came out in Survivor Series and said, like, look, we're our own brand. We're not part of that. They don't want to be in that kind of, we're the build up, we're the minor leagues. So they kind of want to be that standalone. And, they've done that with UK, and, I'm a big fan of NXT UK. So, to see them do this type of pay-per-view is great. I'm looking forward to Tommaso Ciampa and Karrion Kross. I think that's going to be a phenomenal match. You see Finn Balor come back against Damian Priest. That's going to build up Damian Priest a little bit. It's going to be a very interesting card. Seeing Gargano and Keith Lee, Adam Cole and Velveteen. I mean, there's a lot of good matches that are really going to, pique my eye on Sunday for sure.
Does Charlotte keep her title?
I would not be surprised, and I said this the other day, I would not be surprised if they give it to Io, because I think Charlotte is just all over every brand right now. That I think she'll still pop in every once in a while, but I heard that the whole reason, why, or maybe we talked about it, was that there was visa issues with Rhea Ripley. Yeah. So, she got that taken care of, but I could definitely see Io getting her shot because she has really worked and turned this character of hers into a top spot.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth because part of me thinks that they're not going to have Charlotte drop the title that quickly. But I also see okay, they really think Rhea is the future of this company, so it makes sense for her to get it back. But Io Shirai seems like the one most deserving of it, and it would be it would be her biggest win of her career in the company.
No doubt.
So I see all three scenarios in play. I'm hoping that Charlotte loses it, but there's also part of me that thinks it would mean more for either Rhea or Io to beat Charlotte one-on-one.
Yeah,
I mean, that loses a little bit if you beat Charlotte, but you maybe don't even pin her, or you pin her because of the triple threat aspect. So I think that'll be super interesting because, to me, the women's division, and we talked about it tonight with SmackDown's main event, the women's division is sort of rebounding a little bit after there was a little bit of a dry spell after Ronda left.
Yeah, they're definitely they put all their eggs into that basket with Becky and Ronda, and then they threw Charlotte in at the last minute. But you look at any of those matches when it's a triple threat, the champion always never gets pinned. You know what I mean? So I could see it happening where one of where Rhea gets pinned by Io and Io wins the title.
Up the feud between those two.
Exactly, and then it just keeps going. And I mean, I think Charlotte. I don't think she's done with NXT. I think it just shows that that she can do anything. She can be on all 3 shows, and she does a great job at it. And I mean, she is the queen, and that's why she is one of the top women performers. But I just don't see. I just feel like they're going to give Io the title on Sunday.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Again, you can follow us on Twitter, 5-Star Pod Wrestle, Instagram, 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Most importantly, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on notifications so you find out each and every time we drop a new video. And you can go back. We've been on the air now for, about 26 months. So quite a long time if you go back. And there was another Sean in the co-host chair, Sean Saputo. Sean Benjamin, thank you so much for taking the time to do it this week.
All right. Great to be on. Thanks a lot.
All right. We will catch you next week. It'll be right here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.